Good day, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Owl Bob. And remember, this is a show for entertainment and whatever else you think it is. If you're a grown up, well, welcome aboard. Get a nice, comfy place to sit and a libation. If you're a child, get lost. Let your mommy and daddy tell you this. Unless you are a character of majority. Anyway, so who are you? Where'd you come from? What are you doing here? That's, my basic bread and butter, as a shamanic psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist. That's what I look at. Here I am at my favorite library, or one of them. And it has snowed, and I've had to take care of a number of medical issues and financial issues. Sometimes it gets tiring and hard to be living on $300 a month. And I have such high standards. I have to live as a millionaire and not be one. And often that is somewhat tedious because I have to take care of so many things that really are not my responsibility. But, I use my three judgments, which are Dr. Do no harm, do not get personally involved unless you can have a positive outcome and or you need to get the innocents out of harm's way. And my third one, which has been my raison d'etre, is do not get personally involved unless you can learn something from that involvement. And when I motivate myself by those three characteristics, that energizes, keeps me my spry bunny self, and but sometimes, especially when it's the same issue over and over and over and over, and no matter what I do or say or what new innovative way I try to deal with the problem, it's the same over and 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 over. Over and over. No wonder I go to sleep while I talk, like last night. Wasn't that fun? I fell asleep, and I kept talking because I was in state. How did that grab you? So, and it's over and over again thing. It's not just an individual. It's a social, cultural, historical event. What we're experiencing. I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm old enough to remember the Korean War, the Cold War, the Mideast War, where the Arabs and the Israelis fought, and when the English tried to invade the Mideast and take over the Suez Canal, and thus bringing the end of their hegemony, but they didn't care because they had the United States as their bully boy, their bitch. And we have been England's bitch since 1812. Really, since, 1590, give or take. Anyway, so I want to hear more from you guys. You want to hear stories, paranormal stories, supernatural stories. Well, you got to tell me some so I can, identify with them. And one of the things that tires me out is that, if we were all together around the fire, around the circle, you know, you'd be there, and energetically I could see you. But I have to go all the way through the internet to shamanically get a grasp of what you're going through. It's pretty. I don't think anybody else is doing that, really. I mean, I did it for the last 400 plus shows because that was something I was learning from, to do that. That's like, yes, I can read, I can cold read people, I can, see trends, I can negotiate things, but going over the internet and getting shamanic energy, that was kind of, so I did that because I was learning how to do that. Now I do it and see how much that costs me energetically. But I'm here to serve, I'm doing what Love's co-creation wants of me because I serve at the behest of Love's co-creation. And I would hope my adepts, you all in the cadre, pursue that, and that you all in the chorus can speak up to it. And you all who go into state as the shock troops of Love's co-creation can follow your Sensei Al Bob's example. Anyway, let's see. What do you guys say? Hit that live chat button. Oh, look, you have been chatting. Oh, we chatted a lot. Thanks, Jane. Sarah? Snow Owl. Yeah, we had snow. That was tedious, too. You were sleeping. Yeah, last night's show, I was asleep. And talking. I thought that was a pretty good trick. Hey, Twitchy. Ba-doop-boop-boo. Good morning, Sarah. Paranormal is us. I go along with that, Jane. Yep. It's another, I always see it. So I don't know if you guys ever done this, but, your eyes are hooked up to optic nerves and you can actually control them. So you can see over there without having to move your head or your eyeball over there. And when you do that, when you just, through your optic nerve, kind of see over there, you can see the parameter of the paranormal. You see it, right? Kind of, it's like, were you ever in the AV club back in the day of 16 millimeter films that they would play in, 7th and 8th grade? I was in the AV club. And they had this little framer, this little device that you could push what was projected a little bit this way or a little bit that way, just in case it had gone out of the frame. And if you pushed it over the side of the soundtrack, you could see the soundtrack though. Right? And that's all it takes to see what's going on in the paranormal world, is just kind of take your little optic nerve and look over there. So when I was asleep, because, I close my eyes, I go pretty much straight into state. Because I see my imaginary mirror. There it is, And all of those who have been asking me about, so I've been meditating and breathing deeper, but when I go to sleep, I'm not breathing that much. Basically, what happens, when I bring you back and do this, right? Well, you're conscious through the whole thing, and I do that. You don't wake up if I don't snap you out of it. So you have to snap yourself out of it when you're doing it yourself, right? So when you come back, snap your fingers, and that way, because when you're going into sleep, you've gone into state, and you've gone into your Akashic record, and you've gone into your sanctuary of your own choosing and taken other journeys, right? Then you come back, and you need to say thank you to your library, all of your guides. Thank you, right? You have to leave graciously. And when you come back, when you wake up, snap your own fingers. Oh, I found a YouTube. Isn't that what we're on, Jane? I wanted to take a hit. Jane, be more. Tell me the more 411 of what you're talking about there, girl. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. So, have you guys seen the connection between the multi-dimensional world of Lucifer, and the hidden hand, which is just like the movie, the Marvel movie Hail Hydra? That is a hidden hand. Marvel, Stan Lee did an amazing job. Stan Lee was a great servant. Yeah, he and the last 20, 30 years of his life, he made some good book, and he made a living doing his passion, making comics. And all of you who are, oh, I'm not just do your passion, and you will be successful. Right? I mean, this right here, this is a service. I'm doing it, but it takes co-creation, meaning just not me. That's why I keep saying, oh, we got to get the band together. We got to take the carnival on the road. Hey, everyone, I'm in UK, so the late night streams are about 1 a.m. for me, so it's made to stay up. Well, Newt, that's kind of why I do the morning chats, because I know, everyone is from all over the world. You guys aren't just in my neighborhood, so that's why I try and do it. Sound being TG, most important thing in beginning was the word. Yep. And in the beginning, the word logi. Mute, I see you again as a butterfly coming in. You're in the process of becoming. So how you doing with your visual making a magazine, publishing? I need some help doing that. I got a ton of writing, actually a ton. And if you go into my xratted.blogspot.com, you'll get a taste of how I write. That is just 3/4 of one of my 26 novels. I've got, I don't know, 80 or so short stories, maybe more. I got about 800 theses. Well, let's see. I've had some pretty amazing teachers. First, Madame Olga Kluver, she was the first one to show how to go into state consciously. And, the whole thing about hypnotism, you're saying, oh, you can't make somebody do, well, that's not true. There's this thing called MK Ultra. You're watching TV. Like, one of the things that tired me out the last 2 nights, I was in a place where I watched a lot of television. Because when I was a child, I was stuck in front of it and would get not hallucinated, because it made me more aware of what was going on. I would wake up early in the morning, like 4 a.m., and watch the television, before cable, the networks or the channels. We had, like in New York, we had 5 channels, 6. They would have a test pattern. They wouldn't, for like a good 6 hours of their television day, they didn't show anything. It's too expensive. So they had a test pattern. And I would look at that test pattern. I saw data coming through the test pattern, right? And then you'd have, the American flag, and and then they had the, what did they call it? Today's World, which was straight up propaganda. I mean, it said it was from, the CIA and the Defense Department. I'll give you a good example. Crone is an elderly woman that has feathers growing out of the back of her head. That kind of gives it straight away. And a kitchen witch is me. I'm a kitchen witch. I mean, look, everything I make. I mean, I can make a 4-course meal from ketchup and saltine crackers. That's a kitchen witch. I've been making John Birmingham amazing meals for the last 2.5 years. And the nutrition of it, the energetics of it, see, because you put energy into your cooking, you put love. And every meal I make, he goes, "This is amazing, the best thing I've ever had." And he has said that 200 and, more than that, 360 days. That's, maybe 800 days times 2, 1,600 meals I've made, John. And I've purchased most of that food from my pocket. Yes, he gives me a few bucks here and there, but that's usually for fixing something. He thinks he has to pay for everything. I have no money. Sure, you want to give me $40? Sure, no problem. But that doesn't marry me to you, or I'm not your employee. Sorry, because I mostly spend that money for food that he eats. So that's a kitchen witch. Shaman chef. I like that. Shaman chef. I'm gonna put that on my business card. The bitchin' kitchen witch. Yeah, I'm bitching. And from where I come from, I used to live in Boston, and bitchin' was a good word. That meant you were the best. You were bitching at whatever you did. You were at the best. You were bitching. So I find bitchin' as a compliment. It was fun. I lived in Somerville, which was in the 60s, a beautiful, beautiful, amazing working men's neighborhood. And I took the Green Line into Harvard Square. That's where I hung out. Harvard Square is where I hung out. And when I was in Boston, because I was in 2 other places. I was in Winchendon, Massachusetts, and in Worcester, Massachusetts. I worked at WAAF radio station, which had been a kind of Baptist holy roller radio station. And the guy who owned it had a church and had a radio station, and had a Dunkin' Donuts. One of his novitiates kicked off and gave him that Dunkin' Donuts. So when that guy died, and the only person in his family was his hippie, and his son was a hippie. I mean, he shot heroin in his hip. That's where I learned what a hippie was. He got the church, he got the radio station, and he got the Dunkin' Donuts. And I worked on the radio station maybe 6 months. Really didn't get paid. I got all the Dunkin' Donuts and coffee I wanted, but that was about it. Oh, maybe a little, because he had no advertisers. And his church, he turned into the high, hippie, holy sanctuary of, medicinal self-medication. And it was fun. And I learned about doing radio. That was kind of fun. Wicked good. That's right, Jane. Wicked good. It's time to make the donuts. Yep. I had to really swear off donuts after that. I've eaten a lot of stuff, a lot of, like I lived on a ashram that, we had a garden. The only thing that succeeded was beets. So I made beet bread, beet soup, beet goulash, beet, you name it, I made it with beets. I still love beets. But donuts are I think that's one reason I have diabetes. I started having diabetes when I was 19 off those donuts. No shit. I told you my heroin story, doing it once and ending up in a mud puddle in the parking lot of the Tender Trap in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Beats are good. I still love beats, you know? FCRC. What's that mean, Shane? Oh, well, you know, I'm a happy talker. Somebody wants to interview me, if they can call me up on my phone. My phone says it can do, you know, video chats. So some of you have promised to come visit me and to align my digital platforms so I can actually use them. See, the thing about painkillers is that they don't kill the pain, they just addle your brains. Now, me, I have constant pain all the time because those 9 little bones that connect your feet to your ankles, I don't have. I used to wear big metal clamps, walk around with a walker, and they were going to cut my legs off. And the only way I could get them not to cut my legs was to use them. So I started walking around, and the guy goes, "Wow, that's going to be really powerful. We're going to have to give you, you know, a morphine pump and 500 milligrams a day of OxyContin." I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." "Oh, well, how are you going to deal with the pain?" I said, "I'm going to pray. I'm going to meditate." That's what I use. I think. Well, we can do that too. However they want to do it, I'm good for it. Oh, okay. Thanks, Jane. I should have known. Channel typo. Boop, 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 boop. Well, that's one of the things I love about ye old YouTube is that it goes up there on the library. I mean, I actually have over 400 YouTube shows. Yep, I'm back in the library again. Yep, yep. Because it has a really nice place to get a sandwich. First off, it's quiet, it's comfy. No one's going to come in and interrupt me. Ask me if I'm naked. You know, what book am I reading? At the moment, nothing. I'm writing. I'm in my writing mode. And if I read things, I just kind of go on, you know, Wikipedia and read stuff there. That's actually pretty good. You got to take everything with a grain of salt at Wikipedia, but it's a good thing. Anyway, so what do you guys want to talk about? Let's, talk about, the 5G that's going. I mean, man, it's really starting to blow my mind to notice how many 5G antennas are going up, especially out in rural areas. It's like, I mean, they're spending a lot of money to do this just to fry our brains. And, our brains are already fired because if you have Wi Fi in your house, that's already 5G, right? If you have a smart meter in your house, every wire in your house is like an antenna into your brain. I mean, they're going for a thing that is called full spectrum. Servitude. That's what it's called. Full spectrum servitude, right? And the weather, Tuesday I had to deal with it, and I had a lot of things I had to do, and I couldn't deal with a snowstorm, so I kind of moved it out of the way. So behind us, those people got about a foot of snow. Ahead of us, They got about 8 inches of snow where I was. We got 1 inch of snow, and the roads were pretty passable at 6 in the morning when I had to start doing things. So, I wasn't going to be able to do what I had to do if it had snowed all night and got up at 6 and there was like 4 inches of snow and 2 inches of ice. And once I got back to not back to the hill because that had too much snow, I don't even know if I can get up there now the next day, and it's like kind of 50 outside. Hopefully, I'm like, I have my own 5G. I'm microwaving my driveway as we speak. So, that's really, they're going at it big time. And there are many, see, right now, there are many different powerful groups who, at sometimes, it's like, what do they call those guys? Back to Eden. Yep, 5G is evil, but it's already here, gang. I mean, the only way this is, at least this motif, I mean, my thing, so like, the Wi-Fi here, why I get to talk to you so nice, it's 5G. We have to do one of two things. Everyone has to stop using their smartphones. Could you do that? I mean, one of the reasons I live out in the deep green is that I have to drive 35 miles to use my cell phone. So I turn it off, I put it into the glove box, and I don't use it for days on end, So we all make choices, right? And that's what, Yeah, I like audiobooks too, but back in the day when I wrote, my work had me driving everywhere. That's when I listened to audiobooks. Right now, I don't have a CD player, so except in my car, and I don't spend any time in my car, so. So when I was at Cornell between 88 and 91, doing social research, I think I've told you the story. You can go back. I don't know how I could make a bibliotheque of all my shows, but anyway, I was there, and a short story. Beautiful place. It's the land of the Finger Lakes. It's unbelievably gorgeous. It's dairy farms everywhere. These farms have been around for 300 years. Oh, it's just gorgeous. You ever want to take wherever you are take 40 to 81, go straight up 81 into the Finger Lakes. And that's the Adirondacks, and that's the Blue Ridge, and that's the mountains that are the East Coast. And anyway, so it was beautiful. And the federal government, in all their wisdom, decided to turn it into a nuclear waste dump. And the people, because they thought they could, because there weren't that many people there, and the 86 savings loan caused everyone to lose their property. And so the banks were just going to take the property and turn these beautiful farms into nuclear waste dumps. And the people rebelled. And, every time the powers that shouldn't be came in, they kind of ran them off, trying to run them over in their harvesters. And the police were, I can't arrest Uncle Bob. Well, today, most police would just shoot Uncle Bob, and then set him on fire. I think it was a couple days ago in Missouri or Illinois, the kid was 11 years old in 6th grade, and he had not been standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And his school and the school system had decided, as a system, because they were kind of, crowbarred by the parents, to let the kids stand or not stand. No big deal. So this kid's in there, and he hasn't been standing for the Pledge of Allegiance this whole, in 2018, 2019, and a substitute teacher was in. And the substitute teacher said, stand. And he said, I don't have to. I haven't been standing. Stand. And he goes, yeah, I don't have to. And then she called in the police resource. I mean, what resources do the police, does a school police? Anyway, he handcuffed and arrested the kid and charged him with resisting arrest because he wouldn't stand. And they took him to the dean. So here's a guy who's the police resource officer, right? A grown-up, right? Who has been at this school for the last 6 years. I should know the school policy of not having the kids having to stand up to the Pledge of Allegiance. And then here's the dean of students that has been there for 12 years and should know the policy of the school system to, right? So anyway, those two, the police officer and the dean, had the kid arrested and charged with resisting arrest at 11. I don't even know if that's legal. Anyway, so when this all hashed out, the kid's parents were, no dummies. And so, they got themselves a pretty good lawyer and they're probably going to retire on this one. But what did the school system do but fire the substitute teacher? Now, she was the weakest link of this chain because she had never been in that school system. No one read her the regs, right? And yes, she might have been a dick of wanting to push her power as a substitute teacher. But it was really and why do they have police? And what resources do police bring in there? I mean, I've worked for police departments. They should, if you want to have somebody there, have somebody who's trained, like a psychologist, social worker, someone like that, who can see what's going on, who people would, hire me. I'd make a great police resource officer. I did it for 2 years, working for the New York City Housing Authority. And I was the perfect guy. I walked around in shorts and Hawaiian shirt and mirrored sunglasses and cowboy boots. Whereas my partner was totally macked out as a killing machine. She wore the uniform, had the gun, the mace, the taser, the machine gun, the billy club, the little springy thing that pops out and springs out. And one time we went to court, and when they said, well, you got to take her, because she wasn't a New York City cop, she was just a housing authority police officer. She had to leave her, weapons at the door. And when she had 6 different guns and knives and swords and, she had over 40 pounds of weapons when she took them all. Yeah, they actually made her go into a room and take her clothes off just to make sure, Anyway, so that's one of the issues. I got a great substitute story for you. So when I went to public school from 3rd grade to 8th grade, I went to this my parents moved to the North Shore of Long Island, right kind of on the edge of Nassau County and Suffolk County. And Suffolk County is where all the farms and estates were, right? And I went to school with kids who, their parents were either teachers or, phone men or, that kind of job, middle class, Yeah, tasers, how about tasing an 11-year-old boy? They actually handcuffed him behind his back and charged him with resisting arrest. And the policeman said that why they charged him was that the child was threatening them. 3 gigantic, and they were all men, and the substitute teacher was male too, and all 3 were, big, burly guys. Really? That 11-year-old boy was a threat who was handcuffed? Because he didn't start cursing at him until they, yanked his arms behind his back. And it was said that this kid had spinal bifida, so he was like not happy. Yeah, psychogeography books. I like them too. And again, you should never believe anything written in a book unless it's a novel or a short story. Because history is his story. The most patriarchal, all of the scholastic world is one gigantic patriarchal masturbation. That's why I was always a scholar, you know? I didn't have to jump through anyone's hoops. People paid me to read books and write things. And then they took them and did whatever they wanted with that stuff. All right. Like I said, I got about 800 of those theses. Oh, Keats, my favorite. Keats, Byron, Mary Shelley, my favorite. And I think also some of the best science fiction is written by women. Cosmic horror? Never a big fan of horror because my grandma kind of showed me that there's nothing to be scared of, and if you can't get scared of things, it's just kind of ick. But back to my best story on a substitute teacher. So as I went along, from third, fourth, fifth, sixth, I had a cadre of friends. There was J.P. Hoagland. There was Matty Law. He was the token. He should have been named Token. He was like, where I went to public grammar school was just like South Park. Exactly. But instead of having guys, we mostly had female teachers. But they were all like characters because that bald guy who gets upset about gays, who's totally gay, but won't admit it. Whereas Mr. Hand, he's definitely. Anyway, we had all of that, right? And we had this one teacher that her name was Roundtree, and we would call her Squarebush. And she was like Godzilla. She was like 6 foot tall, weighed 800 pounds, and she would, grab you by your neck and throw you up against the wall and hold you until you fainted out. She was like during the weekend, she did WWF wrestling. And J.P. Hoagland was like a total monkey. He would hang from the light fixtures. Our school was kind of Greek. It had columns. And so he would jump out the window. He would dive out the window, right? You would think he was, and we were on the third floor, dive out the window and catch himself on the ledge and swing himself up on the ledge and run around the building. No one could catch him, right? And when there's a sport now that people like, his biochemistry would do. They jump all over the place from building to building. There's a name for it. It's a sport, hipster sport. Yeah. Yep. I like that book too. Peaceful Warrior. I see myself as Socrates, right, in that book. You just met him. Me. I just told you. That's me. There are a lot of us. We're part of a union. Right? Okay, free classics. Well, it's free something. Free, not free basing. Freestyle, free parkour. Thank you, Twitch. See, Twitch has always got it. So that was JP. He was bouncing out the windows and rolling around, right? And he could never sit still. Right? And what are you learning in sixth grade? We learned nothing from Mrs. Roundtree. She just wanted to keep us in our chairs. And we totally ignored her because, see, what they did was all the hard case kids, at sixth grade, they would put us into Mrs. Roundtree's, Mrs. Squarebush's class, and she would break us, right? But instead of breaking, meaning I knew nothing about horses, but when I went to New Mexico and I hung out with people who rode horses, and people tried to make fun of me, so they would give me the really nasty, crazy horse. I wouldn't just try and jump on its back. I would like bring it carrots and apples and talk to it for 3 or 4 days, and then brush its hair and talk to it sweetly. I never put a saddle on its back. I would put a blanket on its back, and I would put one of those girdles, big belt around it, so I could hold on. But I never put a bit in its mouth, right? And that horse would take me anywhere through hell's fire, right? And that's how you deal with animals. You treat them like your friend. They are your friends, right? Yes, that's a great book. Yeats is also. Dickens, yep, Emily, and Charles, both. I love Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. I think that's one of the best sci-fi, stories. And Tale of Two Cities, my two favorite. Anyway, so they put, so there was, so, let's see, who else was it? JP, Maddie, Hoagland, Buzzy, Vincent Salvatore, and Harvey Kleiman, whose father truly was, he ran the UNIVAC for Grumman Aerospace. That's where we got all our fun toys. They let us, dumpster dive through all of their thrown away technology. We made some wicked stuff. I know Alan pretty good, if it's the same Alan. Is he from New York? Is he a college professor? Kafka, yes. Homer typo. I don't know. I thought Himmler was a Nazi science fiction writer. But Homer, yes. I like, Homer Simpson, the guy who was running the not the Indian Point, 3 Mile Island plant when it melted down. His name was Homer Simpson. And Matt Groening took that guy's name, and also Homer, and that's the character of Homer. And he's between a totally mindless dweeb and a great, storyteller, Homer. Himmler, yes. Himmler was, a Nazi science fiction writer. No, he wasn't. He was a propagandist. But that's close to science fiction, right? So anyway, back to 6th grade. So she's trying to break, and we just ignored her. And so that was my cadre. And my chorus was Kim Romano, Debbie Soul, Lisa Stiles, and 2 more sisters. And they were as tight as my cadre. They were just women, right? They were women. They developed by the time we hit 6th grade. Kim Romano was dating the high school football coach, right? So, no, not my friend Alan. Famous comics, made to films. Writes a lot about. So, did you guys ever seen? Sleepy Hollow on television, where the time-traveling Ichabod comes to the 21st century. That was pretty good. Lasted 3 or 4 years. There was another really good movie, a TV show on NBC called Dark Skies. That was pretty good, and it was so telling you what was going on that it only lasted 2 seasons or 3. But they're out there. You could go rent them. I'm sure Netflix has them. I mean, like I said, the powers that be have to tell you what's going on. Yep, well, take a look. You might be interested. So anyway, there we were, becoming the Beat generation of the late 80s. And because everybody turned out to be artists or billionaire bankers, one or the other. People who really stuck in the money became billionaire bankers like my friend Buzzy. And everybody else turned into really, and some of them actually became famous and rich. Yep. The powers that should be tell us through movies. This is true. And books and magazines and you name it. Media tells us through media. And like I said, all of those big M movies, Captain America, the Avengers, that's kind of what's going on. That's those flying aircraft carriers. Those are the big triangles that people see. Anyone see any of those big triangles or seen anything in the sky that they couldn't quite describe or have any paranormal? Everyone in my cadre in sixth grade, we all had, paranormal experiences, and the girls too. Everyone, I remember my parents put an in-the-ground pool, so fifth and sixth grade, all my buddies, guys and girls, because the girls, the guys were starting to go, and especially when it was just my cadre and my chorus together, I didn't have to worry about the influence of the other pickleheads in our school. We'd had a great time. And my parents, because most of these kids lived almost in walking distance of my house. I mean, this is a very rural kind of estate farm area, but this is back in the early 60s, and we had a gigantic, my father was big into lawns, had a big lawn around the swimming pool, so we would camp out, and look up at the stars. We'd take all the big cushions from the easy chairs around the pool and sleep on them. And my parents never thought twice, didn't care, we were fooling around in the pool and no one cared, right? Now, we didn't do anything, because we didn't want to. We actually got real sex education in the seventh grade. They gave us the whole, real good sex education, what they should be teaching kids now. We practiced putting condoms on, the girls did anyway, the guys didn't. Girls practiced putting condoms on, those green things that you cut up for salad. I guess they didn't show the boys because guys would get upset if cucumbers, that's the word I'm looking for, cucumbers, that they cut up their unit. Anyway, so there we were in sixth grade, and Miss Roundtree, Squarebush, she couldn't do anything with us. We would be totally, because we knew we were already, we had a great fifth grade teacher. We read Shakespeare in fifth grade. We read Midsummer's Night's Dream, and we performed it in our class in fifth grade. Well, Twitchy, you were being watched. Sorry. Just, get used to it. Like I said, full spectrum. Anyway, we would see all kinds of stuff up in the sky when we were hanging out by the pool at night. And when we got a little older, we used to go, when some of these guys and gals had cars, I would come home for summer. That one summer I came home before my parents moved back in the city. We took rides out. I didn't realize how weird Brookhaven was. But there were some nice beaches out there that we would near Oldfield, where my dad rented a house. Let's see. Well, those are all definitely paranormal experiences. They're mute. And the thing is not to be scared of them, you know. And fear is really, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. It's the only good thing that FDR blew his brains out. If you go back in history, and they said he had a brain surgery. No, I mean, seizure. No, he put a 45, blew this whole side of his head out. Seems to be a thing for presidents. And so that's why they had a closed coffin, because the whole side of his head was gone. Because he had, been in on the whole, hidden hand, And like I said, anything our government says, it's the opposite. So when he's talking about the New Deal, oh, it's the old deal. And this, the new Green Deal, forget it. That's like the end of the planet. Yep. And, Winston used it, and he got it from some Greek, and FDR used it, and he got it from Winston. They both said it. Yep. And they all said it like they invented it. And that's, the best thing, the only kind of thing, the test pattern for, a politician is that they lie convincingly. But, it's gotten to a point where they don't even do that anymore, No matter what ilk they are, they're all slime bags. They're all bought off. There isn't a single, even the new ones that just got, brought in, they've already taken the envelope. Back to 6th grade. So J.P. Hoagland was like being annoying, and Mrs. Roundtree chased him around and chased him into the coat room and got a hold of him. And she was actually trying to kill him, strangle him. And we heard the and his feet knocking against the wall. So we kind of went to the door, and there was Godzilla, and she had breasts the size of Connecticut, each one the size of Connecticut, and she had this flowery dress, and she's screaming at him, and the spit was covering his face, and she's got her hands, both of them squeezing his head, and he kicks her someplace between the legs, and maybe she was a guy, maybe she wasn't, I don't know, but it really caused her to like freak out and really try and kill him, and throw him around, and her breasts exploded out of her dress and went and encapsulated JP's head. We could not see his head any longer. All we could see were her breasts. It was like a really bad porno film. And all of a sudden, she screamed and ran out of the coat room. And JP's head was lodged between her breasts. And he was a little peanut of a guy. And she's running around, and her dress is like tearing apart. So she's basically naked. And she definitely had a very large bush. And so our square bush nickname for her was actually apropos. And it was right at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, the bell rings. All the kids, like at 2:49, are waiting at their classroom doors to run out in the hallway and get out of the school. And she runs out into the hallway just before the bell rings, and everyone's lined up at the door going. And she's like nuts. Her butt cheeks are flapping. Poor JP's head stuck, and she's basically running down the thing. And then the bell rings, and the kids don't care. So a bunch of kids are going one way, the other half are going this way, and kind of knock her down and run over her, and that unlodges JP. And basically, it was like, something akin to today, but without guns. And so all the kids run out screaming and leave Miss Squarebush in the hallway, and the 18 or so of us are like at our doorway, kind of looking out, like, there she is, like weeping and moaning and quivering. And I think the PE teacher came out and threw a blanket over her and then searched us out of the school. And from that moment on, we never saw Miss Squarebush again. And that was, before Christmas. So from, I don't know how many school days that is, probably more than 60. We had we virtually had a new substitute teacher for each day. And they just passed us on, no test, no quiz, no, just off to, the new middle school, because they didn't have middle schools, and now they did. So that was my paranormal grammar school story. But the third, fourth, fifth, and even sixth grade were some of my most fondest memories of friendship, learning stuff. Because I had four: Mr. Morales, Mr. Davies, Mr. Care, were the greatest teachers. Some of the greatest teachers. They really taught us a lot. Mr. Davies loved theater, so I learned about literature from him. Mr. Morales was like brilliant, and he was all about Euclidean geometry. He said geometry is the only real math. Everything else is a lie. So that's why I learned math from Mr. Morales. That's why I can do trigonometry in my head. So at least 3 or 4 zeros past the decimal. And Davies, Morales, Tricaire, Miss Tricaire, she was great. She was all about everything, that everything was connected, So she knew everything about science and literature and writing and history. And, that's the first person who told me that history was a lie, and it was his story was her. So, and also all three showed us how to, navigate. Yep, they did that. I was at Harvard Square for the first Earth Day. My friend, he's a guy who kind of gave birth to the anti-nuclear movement, because they were going to build the Vermont Yankee. And before they do, they put up this tower that measures the wind and all that stuff. So, when they get a license, they can tell who's going to die and who's not. Sam Lovejoy, that was his name. And he cut down the guide wires to this, 200-foot tower, and it was like a radio tower with instruments on it. And he cut the things, and it came crashing down. It was like kind of over the hill of this small town that had a police force, and it had a gigantic strobe light, meaning the strobe light, would explode every 3 seconds. And, everyone in town, I mean, if your windows were facing, it would light up the wall in your house like a nuclear explosion just went off. They're just kind of giving the heads up of what it was going to be like when the accident occurred. And Sam snipped those wires, and the thing came crashing down. So the cacophony of the sound of the wires, like a guitar string, but 400 feet long, and as thick as your thumb. And then the light stopped blinking. So, they kind of knew something happened up there. So they went up there, and he was waiting for the cops to show, and he had the cable cutters. He goes, "Okay, I want you to arrest me." They all knew him. He had been, going on about this nuclear power plant since the minute they said anything about it. And and I got to know him because of working at WAAF. I went and interviewed. I was the only. We had a radio station. I got a, federal news pass, which was great. You could go to concerts. You could do anything. You could just here's my press pass, and it was like you could walk into anything. It was really the bomb. So that's how I met Sam Lovejoy. And then I ended up, again, living in Somerville with a stewardess because I kept flying between New York and Boston. And I met her on that, and we just kind of hit it off. And she goes, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "I'm supposed to get on this bus and go back to prep school, but what do you want to do?" She goes, "Well, I'm off right now. Let's go have lunch. I'll take you to a great place." And she did. She took me to an Indian restaurant. Never had Indian food and it was really good, like Pakistan, not Indian, Pakistan. And she took me back to her house and just had her way with me, She was probably 24 and I was 18. So, inside the window of legality. But and that's when I realized I like older women. I also like smart women, and I also like women who think for themselves, and women who are mature, let's say, and know what they want, and think for themselves, usually like me, because I appreciate it. Anyway, so that's how I met Sam Lovejoy. Everyone is silently watching. Of course, because they're scared. I don't want to make a mistake. I couldn't care less. The freedom of not caring what others think. And I got that from my grandma. I started young, like about 3 weeks. Because I was naive. I mean, I'm still am naive. I believe everything people tell me. I just check it out. I've learned to check it out. Like Reagan said, trust but verify. Anyway, so I love art lectures. I usually give them. Dead or alive. Well, if I was there, buddy, I'd be with you. I would love to see that guy giving art. Well, if you're going to go see him, you ask him, isn't art history an oxymoron? Because art is all about the truth of one's soul, and history is the paid, plagiaristic, pornographic story of those who shouldn't be in power. You can use that. You can quote. You can say, my teacher, Sensei Al Bob, says art history is an oxymoron because art is the truth of one's soul, of the savage, of the first person, and history is the pornographic lie of the powers that shouldn't be, who are all about full spectrum servitude. So go mute with my blessing. Use that. Go to the art show and ask that question. And come back tonight and tell me what response you got. Good. Good. Okay. Oh, boom. Oh. Boom. Okay. Yeah, but buddy, Twitchy, the bottom line about anything is if it's a mandatory something, do it the way you want to do it. Meaning, when I was at these universities, right, and I was a scholar, and the rest of these morons were scholastics in their coffin, killing each other to get tenure, they hated my guts because I couldn't care less because I wasn't going to be there more than 6 months to a year, right? So I would show up in bunny slippers and my, silk pajamas and my grandma's, day coat and, a big floppy hat and mirrored sunglasses and usually a big beard like this. And they would be, and the deans would come over and say, "Hey, good to see you. Al. Come have a drink with us." And they were like, because they wanted to try to amuse or not amuse, I amused. They wanted to impress the dean so they could maybe get tenure. I couldn't care less. Thing is not to care less, but still go. Have a good time. Meet a cute girl or a cute boy or whatever you want to meet. Extraterrestrial. You visualize anything you want, you'll get it. Bottom line. Well, that's a different story. You know, how I would, when I was a student, well, I would always write the paper first, meaning I learned very quickly that, okay, the professor gives you, okay, in 2 weeks, I want a paper on, Hegel's blah, 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 right? And he would usually give you that thing because of the lecture we just had. So I would take, and if I made sure that all my classes didn't run into each other, that I would have at least an hour between one class to the next. And I would sit in that classroom if there wasn't anybody in there and soak up the residual energy of the teacher and the students. And I would write a list of questions about that paper he wanted us or she wanted us to write. And then I would go to their office. And usually they have office hours after a class. I knock on the door, they'd open up because no one ever came to their office. So I say, "Hey, so this paper, I have this question, this question, this question, this question. And thinking about writing it about this, this, and this. What do you think?" And she or he would go, "Well, this is pretty cool. That's interesting. This, forget about that. Do this, do that, do this. And by the way, go look at these 3 or 4 books. And I have this one book right here you can borrow." So you would pick up that book, and the book that she said, "Oh, you can borrow," that's usually her favorite or his favorite book on the subject. And it's got notes in it and underlinings in it and everything you could ever think of. And then I would photocopy that. And then I would write my paper from that book and the other stuff she told me to go read and other things she told me to think about. And I'd switch around and do this and do that, and then come back with her or his book and said, "Well, here's my rough draft. Here's my outline, and here's my rough draft. What do you think? What's good about the rough draft? What's good about the outline? Where did they not mix? What's better idea? Where should I go? How should I do it?" And that would be by the 4th day. By the next class, I would have that ready. And usually there's a day between classes. They're not right after each other. Usually most college classes are once a week or twice a week, if that. So I would go back the next time I'd see her and say, "Here, what about this?" Right? And she'd say, "Okay." I would come after class. I would have a few good questions to ask from what I had done during class time, and then I'd go see them and say, "Here's my outline and my rough draft. What do you think? I'll talk to you next week," right? Or maybe I'll see you at the end of the week, right? Or the beginning of next week, whatever it was. And then, they would have written all over that, both my outline and my rough draft, right? And then I go back and I type something up from both of those and hand that in. And they go, "Well, that's pretty good, okay. But if you change this and look at this guy and do this," and I'd hand that in. And so, she gave you 3 weeks, or he gave you 3 weeks, right? By the mid of the second week, I'd have it completely done and say, here's my final draft. Tell me what you think of it. Because I still got a week and a half to go. Nobody in my class has even started even thinking about it, right? And a week and a half before the class, it's all right. So I would either get back, A plus and a whole bunch of writing about this, that, and the other thing, or an A and a whole bunch of stuff written about it and things saying if you want a plus, just add this, this, and this. I'll give you a plus. Go back, add that, and then. So, by the beginning of the last week, that still no one in my classes even started thinking about it, I've gotten an A plus. I was the first one to hand it in, right? And a number of times, because I got dyslexia and a few other things, and tests. I never was good on tests. So when I would do that with papers, all of my professors would take them. She goes, this paper is so exquisite, and I can tell everything you need. I'd ever want to get a student to know about what this course was about. You don't have to take tests. You can go in, you can scribble on it, hand it in, so no one else gets upset, but you're good to go. This is how you study. This is how you are a student. You make the sensei happy. And you don't grumble, you don't grump, you don't complain. When I was in those institutions, I would teach as a substitute, right? And I would try, because all the substitutes I had were so terrible, I would say, okay, I'm going to be the best teaching experience these kids ever had. And in my syllabus, and I wouldn't substitute for a day. I mean, they'd come to me, hey, listen, we got nobody to teach, intro this or intro that. Can you do that? I said, yeah, $100 a class and give me a student assistant, not a problem, which they would do. And if I didn't have an office, I would want an office. So they would do that too. So $100 a class, for $100 for 40 minutes, not bad, right? And I'd have them pay me in in thirds, first third, second third, third third. So, starting off, they give me so there was 16 classes. They would give me, somewhere around $400 or $500 just to start off, and then around Christmas time, another $400 or $500, and then the end of the semester, and $400 or $500. Anyway, my syllabus would say, I guarantee you an A. Just show up. And then underneath that, a little smaller, no tests, no papers, no quizzes, no textbook. Then underneath, you miss 3 classes, you fail. If you ask me, is this on the quiz, you fail. No ifs, ands, or buts. And so at the beginning, I would have, 500 kids there, because just show up, you get an A, right? So they'd show up, I'd have a lecture hall, right? So I would get everyone lined up, count off 1 to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the next person said 8, I said, okay, you can leave. And that one little test, I'd have maybe, 120 kids show up for my course. And after the first day, I'd only have 40, right? And then within the next 2 weeks, I would be down to the 7 I was looking for. Good adepts. And that's how I taught. And, the people who ran the schools, not the high echelon who were only thinking about the money, but the deans would really like what I did, and they wish they could do the same, right? All the guys who were tenured or wanting to be tenured, they hated my guts. And the people who ran the place, really, because they were going to make $200 a textbook, and I say no textbooks, they get upset. that I put all these books on reserve in their library for my students to read. That cost them money to do that. They didn't like that. Anything that cost them money and couldn't make the money, that's why I'm a scholar. Anyway, what else are we talking about here? 3 strikes out, that's right. Twitchy, what do you sculpt in? Have you ever poured bronze? Have you ever spray metallized? Online. Well, it's kind of hard to pour bronze online. But I've tried everything. Maybe I might try that one. I used to work in a foundry. I used to cast bronze statuary. I used to put them back together when a storm would break them up. I'd TIG them together and then spray metallize them. Okay. Don't make it. Well, I'll be doing one at 7. Well, I didn't cast a large statuary right off the bat, but and I worked there for 5. It was called Battle Statuary. Joe Battle. That was his name. Joe Battle. Crazy motherfucker. Anyway. And I did silver castings for jewelry. Cut Hishi in New Mexico. Did sand candles in Rhode Island. I lived selling sand cattle. I had a girlfriend. She and I used to do the Rainbow Tour and the Grateful Dead. And we sold, tie-dye T-shirts that we made and sand candles. That's when you take, you melt down paraffin wax in a metal bucket on a fire on the beach, and you make designs in the cold. You get water and you make designs in the sand. And once the paraffin liquefies, which it does very nicely, you pour into the designs in the sand and you stick a little wick in the middle. And, within, it doesn't rain or, it's not too hot, the stuff turns into totally solidified, and the outside of the candle has a very nice covering of sand, And so I did that. I did a lot of tie-dyes, got really good at tie-dyes. And so that's what we did for one summer. She was sweet. And so, love the idea. Yep, go for it. Hey, Miss Drink. Or Miss Ink. Yep, writing is amazing. That's why I like doing it. It's once you get into writing, and a writer writes every friggin' day. Yes, it doesn't matter how you write. You can write like I do in these notepads. With I do 3 or 4 pages of that every day, and then I go downstairs to the computer and plop in a thumb drive and write whatever I'm going to write. Go to class. Catch you later, Twitch. Good luck. Godspeed. Well, gang, I hope you enjoyed this, because I'll talk another 5-10 minutes, and then I'm going to conk out, I think. I feel like taking a nap. So how are we doing with our projects? Feeding the homeless, starting a coffee shop. All you guys love books. Have you started a book club, or are you a book club? Are you visiting old folks in hospitals? Okay, Jamie. Okay. I'll go take a look. And when I hang up here, I will. And you know, would be really great because I get lots of. You can't believe how many people Gmail me, and a day there can be 20, 30, 40, 50 Gmails, and sometimes I don't read them all. So, Jamie, if you could just say, "Hey, this is my," write me now. Or you can call yourself 66. Boy, you get nosebleeds up there. Anyway, I'll read that immediately, James. Bye, guys. Okay. See you later, Jay. See you, 66. I am old folk in hospital. Well, see, you're doing a lot better than the guys who are really there, man. This Christmas, I went into a number of hospitals, and it was scary because they were like hospitals for the rich people. And these are all rich people who had money, and their children are keeping them alive so they can suck their money out of their accounts, because if they die, their wills won't give the money to the kids; they'll give it to some nonprofit. So, it medicine is scary. I was When I was getting my sandwich at the library, there was a woman who's a hospital administrator, and we were talking about healthcare in America. So I said, "So, what do you think about America spending more money than any other country, and yet we are 45? Kuala Lumpur has better healthcare than we do. Liberia has better healthcare than we do. Philippines has better healthcare than we do." And she goes, "Well, I don't know about that. I get paid for what I do, and that's all." I said, "What about your patients?" "Oh, I really don't have patients. I just take care of the paperwork. I just make sure we." I said, "So you're a nurse, and all you do is paper?" She goes, "No, that's pretty much all nurses do, is make sure everything's coded right." I said, "So what about when someone gets sick?" "Well, that's somebody else's problem." So that's why it took me a year or two to find the right doctors to take care of me, because I had to find somebody who was going to be caring about me, going that extra mile, taking care, because I took care of them, and they appreciated what I did for them. It's kind of that quid quo pro thing. Anyway, I'm sick of the yuppie me generation. Well, Jane, how yuppie were you? You weren't a disgusting yuppie. I was never a yuppie. I was always a flower child. Are you as old as me? 70s? Because if you were in your 70s now, we were a little. Well, yuppies were not so much an age group, but a kind of immoral group. 60. You're 60. Okay. So yeah, you're not quite, in the heart of that yuppie, me only group. So, gang, what do you think of, gender bias and sexual bias and racial bias and bias in general? Do you think about it? Does it affect you? Do you see it? Does it bother you? What do you want to do about it? Come on, Shane. You got to be a little better than bias sucks. Bias is the vehicle that the powers that shouldn't be used to, they are such a small group that the only way they can, get people, they can control people is to divide and conquer. That's what it's about. Race is the smokescreen of class. Now when you're black, you know, I am a African American that is, melanin challenged. So there are a lot of my friends. I've lived in those communities. I work in them now, or volunteer because work wouldn't mean I would be making a salary, but I don't. I walk through all the neighborhoods of this city that need support, and I support them. I stop, I listen to what their O's are. I bring them. I brought this person to who really needed some help, and I brought them to the mayor. I said, "Hey, this guy is the poster boy of this issue. If you work on this issue, you will get 20% of the vote." So he did. And that's kind of how you have to get things done. That's called organizing. And Obama never did what I do. So anyway, so it's when it hits 1:30, I will say good day, and I'll see you tonight at 7. I will start on thinking about. I will give Jamie 66 a reply to his Gmail, and I'll go from there. I love you guys. You stay well. Anyway, prejudice is bias. Yep. And we're all prejudiced. If you have an opinion, I tell that to people when people come, and Joshua 4:19 says, so you're prejudiced. What? And I said, yeah. Well, I have some black friends. I said, no, that's racist. Prejudice means you have a prejudicial thought. You have an idea. You have an opinion that you think is right. And anybody who doesn't have that opinion, then they're wrong. Ergo, you're prejudiced. Yep. I'll be there at 7 for fun. Well, this is fun. I wouldn't do this if it wasn't fun. But you know what fun? When you take the lexicon, you look up the word fun. In Sumerian, it means ultimate distraction. I used to be the minister of fun. I had to give up that nom de plume. The soulful side. Yep. Yo. Hey there, research. How you doing, buddy? You having fun? I'll give you a buzz a little later. Da 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 da. So, folks, did you go see Research's chats on the beach? They are beautiful. You got to watch out for those badass. Now, was that badass good or badass bad? It like gave you food poisoning. Those anything with bad in it these days, I have no idea what it means. That's so bad, man. That's so radical. So badass. Something. So was that badass tasty or badass like you wanted to vomit? Badass equals good. Sorry, it's a slant. Yeah, hey, I know. I just wanted it clarified because I didn't want you to be sick, But if it was yummy, well, hey, then I'm happy for you. That was a part of no. It was a bonding burp there, a BB bonding burp for your falafel. Oh, here we go. 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 8 seconds. So I'll see you guys tonight at 7 p.m. Come with some ideas. Let's talk about stuff, things that you might want to visit in our little, vision quest, And I'll be there at 7. So I'll go, there it is.